Hey everybody, my name's Mandy Ray of Ecstatic Astrology, here to give you the new moon solar eclipse update in Scorpio. We're also going to go over the next couple of weeks. This is just a general overview. I encourage you to check out the videos for your rising sign that I do separately so that you know exactly where this eclipse is happening for you. It's very important when you're trying to work with astrology. I definitely work with it. I will have to apologize. I think I missed one of the new moon or the full moon video. I missed the last full moon. So many things going on for me. Has a lot to do with eclipses. Has a lot to do with Mars. My medical body stuff is definitely being tapped and poked and prodded right now. So I'm feeling good right now. And thank you guys for tuning in. I always really enjoy talking to you, even if I don't see you on the other side of the screen. I enjoy doing these videos. So it's really nice to be back. So this solar eclipse new moon in Scorpio happens around 5:30 a.m. October 25th in the central US. That's where I am recording from. So check your local time and date. And it is in Scorpio. It's a south node solar eclipse. A solar eclipse is always a new moon. Okay, so that's like a mouthful, right? Ultimately, what this is doing is it is making room for the future. A new moon is where we plant seeds, but how can you do that when we're at a south node and we're supposed to be leaving behind the south node? The south node is separation, it's past life karma, it's patterns, it is what we're moving away from. So, what do you do with that mixed with the new moon, which is really supposed to be a new beginning? Well, you make room, you get rid of. And Scorpio, which is fixed water, so think contained emotion, a swamp. A lot of people don't like to have the association of Scorpio with a swamp, but I think it's appropriate. And I'm a Scorpio, I can say that. But it holds all of the kind of sludge of our trauma, our fears, desires that we do not look at. It's the shadow. That is what Scorpio is. Scorpio is the idea of death and rebirth and power and disempowerment. So, in a sense, we're moving away from that in our lives in some way, transmuting the trauma, moving away from the fear, and then also transforming this area in our lives. So Venus is with this solar eclipse in Scorpio. The new moon is exact at 2 degrees 0 minutes of Scorpio, and Venus is sitting at 2 degrees 39 minutes. There are 60 minutes in each degree of the zodiac, 360 degrees in the zodiac. And so this is at 39 minutes. It's very close. Venus is very close to the sun and moon during this solar eclipse. Now, the solar eclipse is not visible in the northern, or at least in America, as far as I remember. The lunar eclipse will be on the West Coast, though, so that should be cool. There are some people who say don't go view these things. I am not that type of person. I think it's fine to go look at an eclipse. Anyway, so Scorpio fears, right? We're moving away from those. That's what we're supposed to be doing. But sometimes that means confronting them. The other thing Scorpio has to do with is control. Where do we hold on to? What are we just like, even if it's not serving us, just kind of really holding on to? That is Scorpio. But with Venus there's a love for it. We can say, hey, I may be moving away from this in my life, but it had its evolutionary purpose for my soul. And so there is a sense that we are also loving it at the same time. There is also a values theme here with Venus being present in Scorpio, relationships, maybe how we are empowered or disempowered in those friendships, romantic partnerships. Also, money. Scorpio is also associated with money, generally how we share resources. So think your partner's money, business partnerships, things of that nature. Because Scorpio is power, one of the more empowering or disempowering things you can do is sign a contract with someone, right? So that is the nature of what Scorpio has to do with. So moving away from it, perhaps transmuting, perhaps, taking a look under the rock, what is under there? I don't know, but definitely diving into that. Now, at the same time, there is one other place in our charts that we should look at, and that is where Mars in Gemini is. And why is that? That is because Mars rules Scorpio in traditional astrology. Mars is action, ego. That is what in astrology represents the part of us that moves forward, the part of us that survives, the part of us that makes war, frustration, motivation, passion, desire. Mars rules Scorpio. So Mars is in Gemini and it's about to go retrograde. And it turns retrograde October 30th, just 5 days after the eclipse. And ultimately, it will be sitting still for those 5 days. Now, when a planet is slow sitting still, it is exerting more emphasis in that area. And so, for sure, this Mars and Gemini is going to matter during the eclipse. Gemini is how we think. So, we can frame it up like this. We are leaving behind or transforming a place in our lives, maybe getting rid of certain things, surrendering control certain places, and then looking to Mars to go, how can we do it differently? And these two things are connected. So it's interesting that also in astrology, these two signs are what is known as in conjunct. They don't really understand each other. Scorpio, fixed water, that doesn't really understand mutable air. Gemini is data. Scorpio is deep emotional desire. They don't really like kind of understand each other. And it takes some talking, some understanding, some research to kind of see how they might be connected. So again, that's going to be in your rising sign video. So I encourage you to look at that because I will also talk about where Mars is for everyone. Now, with regards to the upcoming next couple of weeks, I think some of the biggest stuff that happens is in this first week after the eclipse. So we have the eclipse happening. I'm going to pull up the chart here so that I can look at each day. You see my eyes darting to the side is because I'm looking at the astrology chart. So we've got the 25th solar eclipse at 2 degrees of Scorpio. And one other thing that is also in conjunct Jupiter in Aries. So there is we can't move forward. Jupiter's retrograde in Aries. Mars is about to go retrograde in Gemini. And we don't really understand how the Scorpio part of that fits into the equation, but we will. Okay. And I think that comes maybe in the spring. Especially with Saturn moving into Pisces, which is a water sign. And I think it's going to all make sense. The things that we need to let go of, the things that we need to kind of release, surrender to, will all make sense. So the reason I bring up Jupiter is because it's about to retrograde back into Pisces. It's in Aries right now. Aries is also Mars ruled. So a lot of angst, maybe a lot of action. Yet when it moves back into Pisces on the 28th, let me get that exact moment. Spirituality, mysticism, sometimes confusion and lack of clarity can come through. It looks like it's the night of the 27th, Thursday the 27th, that Jupiter moves into Pisces. It may be just after midnight. So 27th into the 28th. That may be a palpable feeling. Jupiter traditionally rules Pisces, so there could be a boost in this, the ability to surrender, really. I mean, Pisces does help to dissolve, help to let go, help to kind of retreat away from, but there also may be a sense that we need to tune into our inner world even that much more with Jupiter and Pisces. Also, Pisces and Gemini, where Mars is, are square. And I think this might be kind of a new virus variant signature. Maybe, may not be, but I've been looking at this moment, Thursday, Friday, and we've already seen a surge in RSV cases in children right now. Mars traditionally rules pandemics and Pisces traditionally rules viruses. So you have those two square, Mars going retrograde. That could be a theme for the early fall, late winter, something to note. Other than that, Jupiter moving into Pisces indicates that we are really tapping back into our intuition. And then Mars goes retrograde on the 30th in Gemini. And it's like, wait a minute. I thought I was moving forward with this data that I got with this information, but there needs to be some more research. So when it stations retrograde on the 30th, you could maybe feel some extra frustration. I mean, that could definitely be the case. Mars is also out of bounds. Um, that means it is not in its typical placement on the ecliptic. It is beyond the ecliptic during its whole retrograde. So when a planet is out of bounds, it's pretty Iranian. It's doing whatever it wants, and sometimes can act even more wildly. So around the Mars station, you have to wonder, is it going to feel more frustrating, maybe more angsty? Gemini is it has to do with communication and thinking. So it could also be that people are wanting to be social. And then Jupiter in Pisces is like, hey, I think you need to, go home and do your mantras today. So there's just like these two things are not getting along. Okay. Jupiter in Pisces wants to escape, kind of say, I don't want to deal with the data. And Mars retrograde in Gemini is like, no, we really need to research and look into this. And so that can be a little frustrating as well. We'll say that. So Mars is retrograde until January 13th. And the station here is really when you can see it red in the sky. And I think that's really cool to look at. Every time Mars is retrograde, it will be opposite the sun. That is just the nature of a Mars retrograde. That's why it looks like it's going backwards in the sky. So Mars is on the outside of the Earth and the sun's over here. So we got Mars and the sun and the Earth in the middle. That is the nature of a Mars retrograde. That means when you go outside, the sun's setting, Mars is rising. And so it looks very red. And it's no wonder ancient people associated that bright red planet with anger. Like, it just makes total sense. And traditionally speaking, actually historically speaking, there are wars during Mars retrograde. I'll talk more about that in my Mars retrograde video, which I have recorded, and I'm going to attempt to edit instead of just splattering it on a wall like Jackson Pollock. So October 30th, we've got Mars stationing retrograde. Okay, what happens beyond that? Well, we've got the moon moving, obviously. The moon will be in Capricorn when Mars stations retrograde. The moon takes about 2 days to go through a sign, generally speaking. We're going to go November 1st, has the moon in Aquarius. And that is of note because the moon and Saturn get together November 1st and 2nd, and they will square Uranus. They will also square Venus and the sun and Mercury. And so I will say Halloween, October 31st, and because it moves into Aquarius starting October 31st, midday. Yeah, around lunchtime in the central US. So 31st, 1st, and 2nd, we've got the moon and Saturn in square to Uranus in the north node of Taurus, and then all of the myriad of things in Scorpio, Mercury, the sun, and Venus in the south node, all in Scorpio. So, and Venus hits the south node during this, and this could be a pretty deep time when we deal with these themes from what we're letting go of. This is known as a T-square, and it's always a moment where we need to take action. It can be very tense, a T-square. Aquarius is about the future. Aquarius is about how we interact with large groups of people, society, how we fit into society. It's also about innovation in the future. And we have to confront that, look at what we might be letting go, and then look to Taurus and what we might be bringing in and sort of get okay with all of that. So that can be uncomfortable. And I do think that might be another key word for these eclipses is discomfort. And you have to sit with it. You have to surrender. That's just the nature of it. The one good thing about the moon in Aquarius, especially November 2nd, is that it will trine Mars, and that does seem to be significant. A little brief pop of a moon trine Mars, which can be motivation. That seems to be early morning on Wednesday, November 2nd. And then we move into moon in Pisces. So this, I think this might be pretty mystical with regards to the eclipses. Pisces actually works really well with the South Node in Scorpio and the Sun and Mercury and Venus, all in Scorpio, by trine. This is supportive. And also by sextile to the North Node in Uranus in Taurus, which is also very opportunistic. So these days seem to be a little easier. Maybe we get to, especially Thursday, November 3rd, once we get to the moon hitting Neptune and Jupiter, it will pick up the square to Mars. And that's the thing I was talking about, how we do want it to be really nice and mystical and really nice and easy and escapist. And, we're trying to tap into spirituality and intuition and creativity. But Mars and Gemini is like, no, we have decisions to make, and we have communications, and we have to do some research, and we have to plan and all of that. So that might be a little frustrating. And that is early in the morning on November 4th, which is Friday. At least once it passes it, we do get a moon Jupiter hit, but I'm just not so sure that's going to be as nice as it would normally with Mars being square to it in Gemini. Look for the virus stuff in the news around that time for sure. That is late on the 3rd and 4th. And it's so crazy to me that this virus stuff that I keep kind of seeing coming in, and I may be completely wrong. I mean, this is an art interpreting the stars. It's never like, some people hit it, but some people, it's just, we're making our best judgment, our best guess is just like a weather forecaster. Okay. So we can kind of pick up on themes, but it's impossible to know the future. I mean, that's the nature of reality. But the thing that I keep seeing coming in with this virus, maybe variant, RSV, flu, whatever it is that this picks up around Halloween, and the amount of Halloween parties that I've been invited to has been astronomical. The amount of shows that I'm a musician, the amount of shows that I'm playing, it's like people are wanting to be social. That's a Mars and Gemini thing. Gemini is communication, Mars is action. So we want to be social and talking and moving about, but Pisces does not typically do that. Pisces wants to, let go into the spirit world and be in the monastery sometimes, or really just be doing mushrooms in the woods. That's a Pisces thing. I have a Pisces moon. I can also say that. So these two things don't really jive. And that's why the more that kicks up, like when the moon transits Pisces around the 3rd and 4th, I could see that maybe being a theme. Let's see here. We've got the moon moving into Aries Friday, November 4th in the evening, which makes Mars the ruler of that. So, I would just say take care of your adrenal system around this time. This is a time to really watch the actions you're taking and double check them. Before you take a step, look where you're stepping, kind of a situation, especially for the weekend of the 4th, 5th, and 6th. Now, the other thing is Venus is applying, that means coming into a square with Uranus. That's not always fun. I'm sorry, not Uranus. Actually, yes, both. An opposition to Uranus, a square to Saturn. My goodness, of course, it's a T-square. So this is Saturday, November 5th, and Venus square Saturn opposite Uranus is, again, may not be the most comfortable of moments. Saturn is trying to build a new world. That's what Saturn's trying to do. It's trying to get everyone to look at the future. Saturn is the way we build, the structures, the rules. Aquarius is society, large groups of people, innovation. So think innovating structures, new types of rules for government, new ways we get together in groups. That's Saturn. In fact, when Saturn moved into Aquarius is when we had the first lockdown. Yay. So Saturn goes direct, actually. When is that date? Let me get that date. I've got it on my notepad. Saturn's retrograde right now, but it will go direct. Oh gosh, it's already direct. Oh gosh, it went direct Saturday. I'm late to the game. Saturn's direct already. My point being, on November 5th, which is a Saturday away, 2 Saturdays away from here, Saturn direct will be square to Venus and square to Uranus. And Uranus and Taurus is trying to change people's values. It's really changing what makes us comfortable. Taurus is money. Taurus is earth. It's food. It's supply chain. That's what Taurus is. It's economy. And Uranus is upheaval. So that's all changing. That change in values is really at an intense tug of war with Saturn. So one is trying to exert rules and one is trying to gain freedom. And those two things inherently are uncomfortable. Now let's take Venus and add it into the mix. So we got Saturn up here, Uranus, freedom, rules, Venus over here. This makes a triangle. Okay. That's my cat meowing. My cat's name is Juno. Anyway, Venus is what we love. Venus is comfort. Venus rules Taurus, but Venus is in Scorpio, which is the depths. Okay, so we may be having to confront a place in which we are either being controlled or we are holding too much control, holding onto the reins too hard. So I will give November 5th a pretty high rating on the intensity meter because something may come out of the blue on that date and we go, oh, I didn't realize this was the thing that I needed to think about, or I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that trauma to come back up. I didn't expect that fear to come back up. I didn't expect this power struggle to come up. And now I have to consult with my own boundaries and see where I'm at in this new world. Okay, so that's November 5th. I will even say into November 6th with Venus still square Saturn there. Once we get to November 7th, the moon is in Taurus, and then we're in eclipse territory, which will be a lunar eclipse in Taurus, and that I will go over in a couple of weeks. That is pretty juicy. We're set up for some new things to come in, and that's why I say at this solar eclipse, let go. We're about to have to change stuff. Sort of surrender, you know, I say sort of because I know that we can't just like say F it all and like completely check out, but definitely doing some surrendering to the things we can't control, to the traumas that we can't, you know, when you have a trauma or a fear, you cannot control that. You literally have to work with it. You have to transmute it. You have to figure it out. You have to dig deep. And that is what we're doing. So I will see you again at the lunar eclipse in Taurus. November 8th is when that will be. I will probably be back. I will say probably November 7th for that video. Now I'm going to go record the rising sign videos. So check those out. They'll be also on the YouTube list. All right, guys. We'll see you soon. And I hope that you move through this eclipse season surrendering. By the way, you can book a session at ecstaticastrology.com. I'm always bad about promoting myself, but there it is. My name is Mandy Ray, ecstaticastrology.com.